Why being alone can be your greatest strength. You fear being alone. But tell me, how strong can you be if you cannot stand even 1 hour in silence with yourself? The crowd gives you comfort. Their noise hides your doubts. Their approval masks your weakness. Yet strength does not grow in the comfort of applause. Strength is forged in silence. Alone, the mask falls. Alone, the truth speaks. Alone, the soul remembers its shape. You call it loneliness. The Stoics called it power. Today, I invite you to face this truth. Solitude is not your enemy, it is your greatest teacher. This is not a sermon about running away from the world. It is about returning to yourself, unarmed, unmasked, unafraid. The Stoics understood, only the man who can stand alone is fit to stand with others. Solitude is the training ground of character, the anvil upon which the soul is hammered into strength. If you cannot master solitude, the world will master you. In the next reflections, we will walk into silence, face the mirror of solitude, and discover why being alone is not weakness. It is the beginning of real power. Part 1. Silence as power. Solitude as the condition where true strength begins. Strength is not born in the crowd, it is born in the quiet. Imagine a soldier. On the battlefield, he looks brave. Surrounded by comrades, cheered by banners, his courage appears unshakable. But take him off the field. Put him alone in the silence of the night, with nothing but his thoughts. Now the true measure of courage is revealed. For silence has a way of stripping away illusions. In noise, we hide. In applause, we mask our fears. But in silence, there is no escape. This is why Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his Meditations, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful than your own soul." The Stoics did not fear silence. They trained in it. They sought it, for in silence, the mind grows sharp, like a blade on the whetstone. Think of Epictetus, born a slave, stripped of power, stripped of status, yet in his solitude he found a strength that even emperors envied. Silence is not emptiness, it is a forge, a place where weakness is burned away, where clarity is hammered into the soul. But here is the paradox. Silence feels unbearable at first. We resist it. We reach for our devices, for music, for chatter, anything to avoid facing ourselves. Yet once endured, silence becomes strength, like a fire that first scorches, then purifies. Ask yourself, can you sit for 1 hour in silence without reaching for distraction? If not, who holds the power, you or the noise? To embrace silence is to reclaim power. Not the kind of power others grant you, but the kind no one can take away. Mastery over your own soul. Part 2. Meeting yourself. Alone time as the mirror that reveals the self. When was the last time you truly sat with yourself? Without a phone, without noise, without the constant drip of distraction. Most of us fear this silence, not because it is empty, but because it is brutally honest. Solitude is not just being alone. It is standing before a mirror that shows you who you really are, without filters, without applause. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "People seek retreats for themselves, in the country, by the sea, in the mountains. But you can find, whenever you wish, a retreat within yourself." Solitude is not exile. It is access to this inner retreat. Alone, the roles fall away. No audience to impress. No group to conform to. In that stripped-down silence, you meet your raw self, the fears you've hidden, the desires you deny, the questions you postpone. This meeting can be uncomfortable, even terrifying, but it is also the birthplace of authenticity. Imagine spending an evening alone with nothing but a blank page before you. At first, the mind screams for escape, but slowly, truths leak out through the pen. What you really value, what you regret, what you long for, but never say aloud. Journaling in solitude becomes like holding court with your own soul. The crowd can cheer you into illusion. Solitude strips away the noise until you face reality. And here lies the paradox. Only by being alone can you discover who is truly with you, your deepest self. Epictetus once said in his discourses, "If you are ever tempted to look for approval outside yourself, know that you have surrendered your power." Solitude is the antidote. It pulls your power back home into your own hands. Meeting yourself in solitude is not an escape from the world. It is preparation for it. For how can you lead, decide, or endure if you do not even know who you are when the noise is gone? Part 3. Freedom from influence. How solitude protects us from the crowd's noise. Every day, you are pulled by invisible strings, expectations from family, pressure from peers, trends shouted by the crowd. Without noticing, you begin to live according to their scripts, not your own. Solitude severs those strings. It creates a sanctuary where you can hear your own voice above the roar of the crowd. In the silence, you learn. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every standard deserves your obedience. Seneca once wrote in letters to Lucilius, "The crowd is the most dangerous of influences. To consort with it is to risk losing yourself." He warned that unless we retreat often into solitude, we slowly adopt the sickness of the masses. Picture yourself at a market square in ancient Rome. Vendors shouting, politicians arguing, neighbors gossiping. Step away, and suddenly, the noise vanishes. Only then do you realize how much weight those voices carried in your head. Today, the market square lives inside your phone. Solitude is the act of closing it. Freedom from influence does not mean rejecting society. It means choosing consciously which voices to allow in. Solitude sharpens your discernment. You learn to separate wisdom from noise, guidance from manipulation. Epictetus once said in his discourses, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid by the crowd." Solitude trains you for this courage to endure being misunderstood and yet remain aligned with your principles. In solitude, the fog clears. You are no longer carried by the current of popular opinion. You learn to walk against the stream, if the stream is wrong, and in doing so, you reclaim the highest Stoic freedom, the freedom to think for yourself. Part 4. Forge of Inner Clarity. Solitude as fire that refines thoughts and choices. clarity does not come by accident. It is forged, like iron in fire. Solitude is that fire, stripping away distractions, testing your convictions, and leaving behind only what is solid and true. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." In solitude, you train this power, the power to reinterpret reality with clarity. Think of a blacksmith in his forge. The raw metal is heated, hammered, and reshaped until impurities fall away. So it is with the mind. Solitude is the furnace where false beliefs, shallow desires, and borrowed opinions are burned off, leaving only the steel of principle. In a noisy world, decisions are often reactive. We choose based on urgency, fear, or imitation. But solitude forces deliberation. It slows time, allowing you to examine motives, to test each desire. Is this necessary? Is this aligned with virtue? Seneca once wrote in on the shortness of life, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Solitude reveals where the waste lies. In the stillness, you see clearly what deserves your hours and what is nothing but ash. True clarity is not merely knowing what to do, it is knowing what to refuse. Solitude trains this negative wisdom, the courage to discard, to say no, to simplify until only the essential remains. To live without solitude is to live in fog. To embrace solitude is to step into fire, painful at first, but purifying, and when you emerge, you carry not confusion, but clarity, not ash, but steel. Part 5. Nature's Classroom. How being alone in nature restores harmony and teaches balance. Civilization builds walls, but step into the forest, climb a mountain, or sit by the sea, and suddenly those walls dissolve. Nature becomes the oldest classroom, and solitude its only admission fee. Marcus Aurelius once reflected in Meditations, "Constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul." Alone in nature, you begin to feel this truth, that you are not separate, but part of a greater whole. Nature teaches balance. The river flows not too fast, not too slow. The tree bends without breaking. The seasons change without haste or complaint. In solitude, these patterns whisper to us. Harmony is strength, and balance is wisdom. The Stoics often walked outdoors to think. Epictetus, a freed slave turned philosopher, knew that philosophy is not learned only in books, but in how the wind sharpens your face, how the cold teaches endurance, and how the vast sky reminds you of proportion. When you are alone in nature, the ego quiets. The endless chatter of "I want," "I fear," "I deserve" fades. In its place arises perspective. You are a brief moment in an ancient cycle, but a meaningful one if you live aligned with it. Seneca once advised in letters to Lucilius, "We should take wandering outdoor walks, so that the mind might be nourished and refreshed by the open air and deep breathing." This was not recreation, but discipline, a way to reset the mind and reorder the soul. Alone in the wild, you learn humility. You cannot command the storm or the stars, but you can choose how to stand beneath them, and in this realization lies the deepest lesson of solitude in nature. Control is illusion, harmony is freedom. So leave the city sometimes. Walk without headphones. Sit where the earth breathes. Let solitude and nature together reteach you what it means to be human. Not a master of the world, but a student of its eternal order. Part 6. Strength in Values. Alone moments help us align life with Stoic virtues. Alone, the noise of the world fades, and what remains are the questions you cannot escape. What do I truly value? What kind of person am I becoming? The Stoics taught that virtue is the only true good: wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. But in the crowd, these words become slogans. In solitude, they become mirrors. Seneca once asked in letters to Lucilius, "What progress have I made? Am I becoming more gentle, more restrained, more free from anger?" Solitude forces the same accounting. Alone, you stand trial before your own conscience. In the noise of society, values blur. Success is confused with wealth, respect with followers, strength with domination. But solitude burns away these illusions, leaving only the raw question: am I living according to my principles or someone else's? Think of Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, yet often alone with his journal. Each night he returned not to the Senate but to himself, writing, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Solitude is where principles are tested. Will you cheat if no one is watching? Will you stay kind when kindness brings no applause? Virtue lived alone is the only virtue that cannot be faked. This is why solitude is not weakness, but strength. It forges a spine of values that cannot be bent by fashion, opinion, or fear. The man or woman who has met themselves in solitude carries within an anchor no storm can uproot. In the end, the true measure of a life is not applause, wealth, or fame. It is whether, when alone, you can respect the person staring back at you in silence. Part 7. Dropping the Masks. Solitude strips away the roles and forces us to face our truth. In society, we are never fully ourselves. We play roles: the professional, the friend, the child, the parent. Each role demands a mask, a smile here, a posture there, a silence to fit in. These masks are not lies, they are survival, but over time, the mask grows heavy. We forget where the mask ends and the face begins. Solitude is where the masks fall. Alone, there is no audience to impress, no role to maintain. The laugh you force in company, it disappears. The opinions you borrow to blend in, they crumble. Epictetus once said in his discourses, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Alone, you face the foolishness you hide from others. You see the raw self, insecure, anxious, imperfect, and that is the beginning of honesty. The world rewards masks. Charisma gets followers. Pretension gets applause. But solitude rewards truth. It tells you, here you are, without costume, without script. Can you bear to meet this version of yourself? Think of Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, yet in his Meditations personal journal, he wrote not for Rome, but for himself, confessing his flaws, his temptations, his weakness. He removed the emperor's mask and revealed the man. This is the paradox of solitude. It humiliates you before it strengthens you. It shows you the cracks, the false fronts, the postures, and then whispers, "Now, build from here." Not from the mask, but from the marrow. The man or woman who dares to drop the masks in solitude will one day return to the crowd unshaken, because once you know your true face, no opinion can tell you who you are. Part 8. Memento Solitudo. Link between solitude and memento mori, preparing for death with courage. Solitude is not only a place to recharge, it is a rehearsal for the ultimate solitude, death. When you are alone, no friend can stand as shield, no crowd can distract you, no noise can hide the truth. It is just you, your thoughts, and the awareness that one day, this aloneness will be final. Seneca once wrote in his letters to Lucilius, "Rehearse death, to say this is to rehearse freedom. A man who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." Alone, you confront the same silence that will one day greet you in your final hour. The stillness of a quiet room echoes the stillness of the grave. Yet, instead of despair, solitude trains courage. If you can sit with your mortality in the small deaths of each day, the silence after conversation, the dusk after sunlight, the moment after breath, then the final death loses its terror. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself in his meditations, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." Solitude whispers the same warning. Every time you sit in silence, it is a gentle rehearsal. One day, this will be forever. Are you ready? And if you emerge from solitude unafraid, if you can carry its lesson into the noise of daily life, then you carry a hidden armor, not made of steel, but of serenity, not against swords, but against fear itself. Part 9. Creativity in isolation. History shows solitude gave birth to great works of philosophy, art, science. Solitude is not emptiness, it is fertile ground. In silence, ideas sprout, connect, and mature. History proves this. The greatest works of philosophy, art, and science were often born not in crowded halls, but in solitude. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his Meditations, "Men seek retreats for themselves, but nowhere can man find a retreat more peaceful or more free from trouble than his own soul." Think of Newton. In 1665, when the plague shut down Cambridge, he retreated to Woolsthorpe, alone, under an apple tree. He formed the theory of gravity. What others saw as isolation, he turned into revelation. Or think of Nietzsche. In the solitude of the Swiss Alps, he wrote a work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Without crowds, without applause, he could hear the thunder of his own thoughts. Solitude is the forge of originality. Crowds repeat, solitude creates. The mind, freed from the tyranny of constant noise, begins to weave patterns unseen, possibilities unimagined. Seneca once reminded in his letters to Lucilius, "The mind is never greater than when it is in complete self-control." So the question is not whether you can create in solitude. The question is whether you dare to close the door, to face the blank page, to wrestle with your own silence. This is the birthplace of greatness. And when you return from solitude, you do not return empty. You bring back treasures, insights, visions, creations, forged in silence, yet capable of echoing across centuries. Part 10. Alone, yet not lonely. Distinction between solitude and loneliness, and why one strengthens, the other weakens. Many fear solitude because they mistake it for loneliness. But solitude and loneliness are not the same. Loneliness is emptiness that drains the soul. Solitude is fullness that nourishes it. Epictetus once taught in his discourses, recorded lectures, "Alone does not mean abandoned. Alone means free to shape your life without interference." Loneliness comes when you are disconnected from meaning. You can sit in a crowd of thousands and still be lonely because you are cut off from yourself. Solitude, however, is the opposite. It reconnects you with your essence. Think of the monk in a silent monastery cell. To the outside world, he is alone. Yet in his solitude, he communes with the eternal. He is not lonely. He is alive in the deepest sense. Or think of Marcus Aurelius on the battlefield. Surrounded by thousands, he still turned inward, writing his meditations, alone in thought, though not lonely, because he was in the company of reason and virtue. The Stoics remind us, solitude is strength, but loneliness is decay. One builds, the other corrodes. Solitude requires courage because it strips away distraction. Loneliness is simply the absence of connection. It weakens. The art, then, is to learn solitude without falling into loneliness, to choose silence, not because the world rejects you, but because you embrace yourself. Remember, you may walk alone, but you are never truly alone if you carry wisdom, virtue, and courage with you. These companions do not abandon. They make solitude your ally, not your enemy. The final word on solitude. We have walked through 10 reflections, and each one whispered the same truth. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is strength. Solitude is not an absence, but a presence, the presence of your truest self. If this message has awakened something within you, I invite you to share it, to subscribe, and to walk with us further into the path of Stoic wisdom. For in our next reflection, we face the storms of the soul itself, anger and fear. And with the Stoics, we will learn how to master them. 8 Stoic strategies for anger and fear, because solitude gives us strength, but wisdom teaches us how to wield it. As Epictetus once taught in his discourses, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Be well, be still, be free.